Y'all remember yesterday we started reading The Rough-Faced Girl by Rafe Martin, and we read about how they lived in wigwams on the lake and how they had all of them in their little town and then their village. And then there was a poor man and he had 3 daughters, and there was 2 that were beautiful and 1 that was scarred, and she was the youngest, and she sat by the fire and she had burn marks and things. And her 2 older sisters went to their father to get the jewels that they wanted and needed so that they could marry the invisible being. And he gave them all they wanted, and they went to meet the sister, and she asked for proof that they had seen him, and they couldn't give him proof because they hadn't actually seen him. They didn't know. So they made guesses, and they were shamed, and they had to go back to their village ashamed after being scared because they couldn't actually see him. And then the next day, the younger sister, who wasn't as beautiful, went to her father and asked for anything he could give her. So he gave her some old things that he had collected, like older shoes, and they had holes in them, and she had to make her own clothes. And so she made the designs in her clothes and wore the 2 big moccasins and wore the jewels, created her own clothes, and people made fun of her as she walked through the village to go meet with the sister because she wanted to marry. And I remember as she walked, she saw the great beauty of the earth and saw how much the earth was, and saw the invisible being in the earth. And so she went to meet the sister, and she met her at the lake shore, and she said, I've come to marry the invisible being, and that's where we stopped. So I want y'all to remember to be thinking about what story this relates to that we've already read. Okay? So she said, said the sister very gently now, if you want to marry him, you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen my brother, the invisible being? And the rough-faced girl said, yes. All right then, said the sister. If you have seen him, tell me, what's his bow made of? And the rough-faced girl said, his bow? Why, it's the great curve of the rainbow. Ah, exclaimed the sister in excitement. Tell me, she asked, if you have seen my brother, the invisible being, what's the runner of his sled made of? And the rough-faced girl, looking up into the night sky, said, the runner of his sled? Why, it is the spirit road, the Milky Way of stars that spreads across the sky. Ah, cried the sister in wonder and delight, you have seen him. Come with me. And taking the rough-faced girl by the hand, she led her back to the great wigwam and sat her in the seat next to the entrance, the wife's seat. Then they heard footsteps coming along the path, closer and closer. The entrance flap of the wigwam lifted up, and in stepped the invisible being. And when he saw her sitting there, he said, at last, we have been found out. Then smiling kindly, he added, and oh, my sister, but she is beautiful. And his sister said, yes. The sister of the invisible being then gave the rough-faced girl the finest of buckskin robes and a necklace of perfect shells. Now bathe in the lake, she said, and dress in these. So the rough-faced girl bathed in the waters of the lake. Suddenly, all the scars vanished from her body. Her skin grew smooth again, and her beautiful black hair grew in long and glossy as a raven's wing. Now anyone could see that she was indeed beautiful. But the invisible being and his sister had seen that from the start. Then at last the rough-faced girl and the invisible being were married. They lived together in great gladness and were never parted. Okay, so what story do y'all remember that we read that relates to this one? Y'all remember we talked about, remember the sisters? Yes.
Cinderella.
Yes, and why is that?
Because she turned beautiful.
Right. And so what happened, like how did the sister progress throughout the story? What changed with the youngest sister, the rough-faced girl?
She became pretty.
Okay, what else is there?
She got to marry the prince.
Right, because she actually had seen him and she knew about him and she actually did love him, unlike the other people who just wanted to be with him because of who he was.